The galaxy was full of stories, and every civilization carried its own legends of survival, discovery, and war. For thousands of years, countless species had looked at the stars and believed they understood what life beyond their borders meant. Most of them thought they had already seen everything. Every kind of ship, every kind of strategy, every kind of power. But then came the day when something new arrived, something that made even the most powerful empires pause in silence. At the edge of the Orion Arm, a fleet appeared. No one had ever seen ships like them before. They were sleek, dark, and strangely quiet, sending out signals in a language that confused most translation systems. Their arrival sent waves of panic through the nearby colonies. Merchants abandoned trade routes, small settlements shut down their communication relays, and governments scrambled to prepare their defenses. Even the Galactic Council, which was usually slow and filled with endless debates, called an emergency session. Something about this fleet felt different. The council gathered in their massive hall where voices echoed from 1,000 worlds. Representatives argued, as they always did. But this time there was a deeper fear. Some wanted to send fleets to intercept. Others wanted to ignore the signals and hope the newcomers moved on. A few dared to whisper the unthinkable. Maybe it was time to call upon humanity. For centuries, humans had been outsiders to the greater galactic stage. They were known, but not respected. Many called them reckless, stubborn, and too emotional to be trusted with delicate matters. Some civilizations still saw Earth as young and fragile, barely out of its childhood compared to the empires that had ruled the stars for millennia. But there were also rumors, ones that spread quietly between traders, mercenaries, and explorers. Rumors that humanity had been working on something in secret, something massive. On Earth, the signals from the alien fleet had already been intercepted. The governments of humanity didn't waste time arguing. They had been preparing for this moment for decades. In the deepest shipyards hidden behind asteroid belts and cloaked stations, a project unlike anything else had been underway. It was not just a ship. It was a statement, a promise built into steel and fire. The project had been born from hardship. Earth had gone through wars, disasters, and betrayals. Each struggle taught humanity that survival depended not just on courage, but on unity. Out of those lessons came the dream of a ship that could represent all of humanity. A vessel so strong that no enemy could break it, and so vast that no ally could ignore it. This dream had been given a name whispered only in secure rooms: Titan. When news of the alien fleet's arrival reached the highest levels of Earth's command, the response was calm. There was no panic, no scrambling. Orders were given, and across the solar system, massive hangar doors began to open. Workers who had dedicated their lives to the project watched with awe as the Titan slowly moved for the first time. From the surface of Earth, it was invisible. But in the darkness of space, its silhouette consumed the stars. It was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Larger than anything most species could even imagine. Its hull stretched for miles, layered with armor that shimmered faintly under the light of distant suns. The ship's engines hummed with a quiet power, bending space in ways that seemed unnatural. It wasn't just a battleship. It was a monument. Inside the council chambers, when the first images of the Titan-class battleship were broadcast, silence fell. Even the most arrogant representatives had no words. They had expected human ships to look small, crude, and desperate. What they saw instead was a vessel that dwarfed their own fleets. The alien newcomers continued sending signals, unaware of what was unfolding. Their messages carried questions, warnings, maybe even threats. No one could tell. But across the galaxy, the focus had shifted. The mystery of the newcomers was overshadowed by the revelation of humanity's creation. Every network, every channel, every corner of galactic communication lit up with a single question. How had Earth, a world considered so small, achieved something like this? For ordinary humans, the news spread like fire. Families who had lost loved ones in old wars looked up at the skies with pride. Miners, engineers, scientists, and even children in schools watched broadcasts of the Titan gliding through space. It was not just a ship to them. It was proof that humanity was no longer fragile. It was proof that no matter what came next, they would stand tall among the stars. The alien fleet finally noticed. Their sensors detected the enormous vessel moving into position. For the first time, they stopped transmitting signals. No one knew whether they felt fear, curiosity, or disbelief. But the galaxy knew one thing. The encounter had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. This was not the story of humans begging for a place among the stars. This was not the story of Earth as an underdog. This was the story of a species that had endured everything thrown against it, and then answered with a creation so vast it left the galaxy speechless. And in that moment, as the Titan-class battleship stood between Earth and the unknown fleet, humanity did not look small anymore. They looked like titans. The galaxy had seen large ships before. Empires that were thousands of years old often boasted about their dreadnoughts, their cruisers, and their massive carriers that could carry whole armies across star systems. But when humanity rolled the Titan out into the open, it was clear that this was something entirely different. It was not just another warship. It was something that redefined the meaning of scale in space. The moment the Titan left its hidden dockyard, there was a ripple of silence across Earth's networks. People stopped in the middle of their work, markets froze, and whole cities gathered around giant screens. The ship moved slowly, not out of weakness but because of its enormous size. It carried itself with a steady confidence like a mountain drifting through the stars. Those who had worked on it for years wiped their eyes as they watched. Engineers who had welded the first plates, scientists who had designed the shield cores, pilots who had tested its engines in secret, they had all sacrificed years of their lives. And now finally their creation was no longer a secret hidden in the dark. It was alive, awake, and ready to be seen by the galaxy. Across the Council's chambers, representatives from countless species were given their first official transmission of the Titan's unveiling. Some leaned forward, stunned. Others tried to hide their fear behind calm expressions. A few, the ones who had always mocked humanity as reckless dreamers, went completely quiet. The massive vessel filled the broadcast screens, its metallic body catching the light of distant suns, and no one could deny what they were seeing. The design itself was unlike anything the galaxy had ever produced. Most warships were built purely for efficiency, with flat armor and compact bodies. The Titan, however, was layered with curves and deep lines that gave it both elegance and strength. Its armor reflected faint glimmers of blue light, a product of new alloys humans had created from rare elements mined in forgotten asteroid belts. Around its hull, invisible but present, shields pulsed softly, so powerful that even the Council's most advanced scanners had trouble reading their strength. And then there were the engines. Instead of the usual bright exhaust flames that most ships used, the Titan's engines seemed to bend the very darkness around them. They did not roar. They hummed with low vibrations that carried across the void. Space itself appeared distorted behind them, as if reality was struggling to contain the ship's movement. Ordinary citizens on Earth and the colonies watched with pride. To them, the Titan was not just a machine. It was proof of how far humanity had come. For centuries, they had been underestimated, sometimes ignored, sometimes laughed at by older civilizations. But now, for the first time, the galaxy had no choice but to watch them with respect. Inside the ship, the crew took their positions. Thousands of men and women had trained for this day. Pilots sat in deep control chairs. Technicians monitored endless streams of data, and communication officers linked the Titan to the fleets of Earth's smaller ships that moved in escort. Even though the Titan could fight alone, Earth had chosen to present it not as a solitary monster, but as the heart of a united force. The first message from Earth to the Council was calm and simple. A human diplomat appeared on the screen, standing with the ship's vast control deck in the background. There were no threats, no boasts, only a clear statement. Humanity was answering the alien fleet's call, and the Titan would represent them. But behind that calm voice, everyone knew what the sight of the Titan meant. Humanity was sending a message not just to the newcomers but to the entire galaxy. Earth was no longer fragile, and it would never again be dismissed as insignificant. The alien fleet, which had been circling near the border systems, finally stopped transmitting their strange coded messages. Their scanners must have picked up the Titan's size and energy signatures. Even without translation, silence was an answer. The newcomers had noticed. Rumors spread faster than light across the networks of every known species. Traders in deep space carried stories that grew bigger with every retelling. They said humanity had built a ship large enough to carry whole cities inside. They claimed the Titan could move between stars in seconds. They whispered that its weapons could split moons apart with a single shot. No one knew which rumors were true and which were exaggerations. But the fear and fascination were real. For ordinary humans, life suddenly felt different. Children in classrooms painted pictures of the Titan on black paper, imagining themselves as future crew members. Old veterans who had fought in humanity's toughest wars finally smiled with pride, saying that all their sacrifices had been worth it. Families stayed up late at night, eyes fixed on glowing screens, watching the Titan glide across the darkness like a guardian of Earth itself. Even within the council, where politics often turned every moment into endless debate, the atmosphere shifted. The older empires had been used to thinking of humans as reckless colonists. Now they had to think of them as builders of something even they had not achieved. Jealousy crept into some voices, respect into others, and quiet fear into many. The Titan kept moving forward, slow but steady, escorted by smaller human ships that seemed almost invisible beside its massive frame. Each rotation of its engine sent small ripples of distortion through the black of space. To those watching from a distance, it felt as if the very stars were leaning toward the ship. Inside its walls, the crew felt both pride and responsibility. They knew this ship was not just about weapons or defense. It was about survival. It was about standing before the galaxy and saying, "We are here. We belong. We will not be broken." Every console, every corridor, every chamber of the Titan carried that message within it. When the alien fleet finally made their move, shifting formation and preparing to meet the Titan, the galaxy held its breath. No one knew if the meeting would bring peace, war, or something far stranger. But one thing was certain. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before. The unveiling of the Titan was no longer just a military event. It was history unfolding in real time. It was the moment when Earth stopped being a distant world in the shadows and became a power that could no longer be ignored. And though the future was uncertain, one truth remained clear in the hearts of every human watching. The Titan was more than a ship. It was their voice, their shield, their proof that even a species once called weak could rise, build, and stand among the stars as equals. As the Titan held its position, waiting for the alien fleet's response, the galaxy could only remain silent. Some civilizations whispered in fear, others whispered in hope. But all of them, without exception, whispered the same word when they looked at the human ship that now towered in the void. Titan. The Titan-class battleship drifted through the dark void, silent yet commanding, its enormous frame glowing faintly against the backdrop of stars. To the human crew inside, the silence before contact felt heavier than steel. The ship was steady, calm, almost too calm. Every officer, every technician, every soldier at their station knew that history was about to turn a page. The alien fleet had stopped moving. Their strange ships, sharp and angular, hovered in formation just beyond the border system. They were still sending faint signals, but no one knew what those signals meant. Some believed they were warnings. Others thought they were invitations. But inside the Titan, no one wanted to guess anymore. Humanity had waited too long to step into the galaxy. This moment had to be handled carefully. The command deck of the Titan was a vast chamber filled with glowing panels, giant display screens, and rows of officers watching every movement outside. The captain stood at the center, calm and composed, watching the alien fleet with narrowed eyes. Around them, crew members moved quickly but without panic. Every system had been checked, every weapon primed, every shield layered with power. The Titan was ready for anything, whether it was a greeting or a battle. On Earth, billions of people were watching through live transmissions. Schools had shut down for the day. Families sat together, eyes locked on screens, hearts racing. Even in distant colonies light years away, miners, traders, and farmers all tuned in. They were not just watching a ship. They were watching their place in the universe being decided in real time. Finally, the alien fleet responded. One of their ships moved forward, a slender vessel with glowing patterns that shifted across its hull. A beam of light shot out, not a weapon but a communication signal. The Titan's systems caught it instantly. Strange shapes, symbols, and sounds filled the displays. It was a language no one had ever seen before. The translation system struggled. At first, the words came out broken, scattered, meaningless. Then slowly, piece by piece, a pattern formed. The aliens were asking a simple question: who stands before us? The crew exchanged glances. The weight of the moment was almost overwhelming. After centuries of dreaming, of building, of preparing, humanity was finally being addressed directly by a new species. The captain gave a slow nod. The communication officer tapped the controls and a human voice carried across the void. "We are the people of Earth. We do not come to kneel. We do not come to conquer. We come to stand." The words echoed inside the command deck. For a long time there was no response. The alien ships remained still, their glowing patterns shifting in unreadable rhythms. The silence stretched on and tension filled the air. Even the hum of the Titan's engines seemed louder in that moment. Finally, the aliens answered. This time the translation was clearer. Their voice, strange and layered, filled the chamber. "You are not as we expected. You bring a mountain into the stars." "Why?" The crew exchanged glances again. They had expected hostility, maybe demands, maybe even threats. But curiosity, that was something different. The captain's voice was steady as they answered. "We built this ship because we have learned what survival means. We built it because the universe is vast and we are no longer afraid. We built it so no one will mistake us for weak again." On the displays, the alien ships shifted formation slightly, almost as if they were circling the Titan, studying it from every angle. The patterns on their hulls pulsed faster. The translator struggled to keep up, but fragments of meaning came through. They were astonished. They were questioning. And beneath it all, there was something else, respect. But not all of them felt the same. Within the alien fleet, one of the smaller warships suddenly broke formation. Its engines flared and its weapons began to glow. The command deck filled with alarms. The crew snapped to attention. Humanity had known this could happen. There were always factions, always those who would test strength with fire. The hostile ship fired. A lance of energy cut through the void, striking directly at the Titan. The impact lit up the shields in a bright flash, a storm of sparks scattering across the massive hull. For a breathless moment, the galaxy held its breath. The Titan did not move. The shields shimmered, then stabilized as if nothing had happened at all. The bridge crew stared at their screens, wide-eyed, and then slowly, a ripple of relief spread across their faces. The Titan had absorbed the strike without even flinching. On Earth, billions erupted in cheers. Children jumped up and down. Parents hugged their families. Strangers shouted in the streets. For the first time in history, humanity had not just survived an alien weapon, they had stood against it without breaking. The captain gave the order for a response. But it was not destruction. Instead, the Titan unleashed a single controlled shot. One of its massive cannons rotated, humming with energy, and then fired a beam of light that cut across space. It did not destroy the alien ship. Instead, it carefully sliced through the weapons on its hull, disarming it completely while leaving the rest intact. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy if it chose to, but it would not. Not unless forced. The alien fleet froze in silence once again. The hostile ship drifted powerless, its weapons smoking. And then slowly the rest of the fleet pulled back into formation. This time their signals carried no threat. The translator caught their message, simple and heavy with meaning. "You are strong. You are not prey." The words carried across every broadcast, reaching Earth, the colonies, and even the Council's chambers light years away. The galaxy finally understood. Humanity was no longer the fragile, underestimated species it had once been. They had stepped onto the stage not as beggars, not as invaders, but as equals. Inside the Titan, the crew sat back in their chairs, the tension slowly easing from their shoulders. They had faced the unknown, and they had not faltered. They had answered with calm strength, and the galaxy had listened. On Earth, celebrations broke out everywhere. People sang, danced, cried, and cheered. For the first time, the stars no longer felt like an unreachable mystery. They felt like a future that belonged to them. But beyond the celebrations, in the quiet corners of power, leaders and generals understood the deeper truth. This was only the beginning. The Titan had spoken, but the galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations old and new, some friendly, some dangerous. Today was a victory, but tomorrow would bring new challenges. For now, though, humanity stood proud. The Titan drifted in the silence of space, its enormous hull glowing faintly, a guardian watching over its people. And across the stars, countless eyes watched it with awe, whispering the same thought. The humans had arrived, and they had arrived as Titans. The Titan floated in silence after the first encounter, but silence in space was never truly empty. The alien fleet had withdrawn slightly, not in defeat, but in thought. Their signals had slowed, their formations shifting as if they were debating among themselves. Humanity had shown strength, and strength always forced others to reconsider their place. Inside the command deck, the crew remained tense. The shields were still pulsing with energy, holding steady after the first test. The officers exchanged quiet glances, knowing that what had just happened was only the beginning. No one truly believed the encounter would end with a single shot and a few words. There were always those who wanted proof, not promises. The alien fleet's silence was finally broken when several ships moved into a new formation. They spread out like wings, circling carefully, their glowing hulls sending out sharper signals. The translator worked furiously, piecing together the fragmented meanings. The message became clear, a challenge. They wanted to see if humanity's power was as real as it looked, or if the Titan was just a showpiece, a hollow mountain floating in space. The captain stood calm in the center of the bridge. Orders were given quietly, without panic. Every weapon was primed, every shield reinforced, every crew member ready. Yet even in that moment of tension, there was no fear. The Titan had already proven it could withstand an attack. Now it would prove something greater, that humanity's power was not about destruction, but about control. The alien ships struck first. Bright streaks of plasma tore through the darkness, slamming into the Titan's shields. Explosions of light rippled across the protective barrier, but the ship held firm. The crew barely felt the impact. Just a faint shudder through the hull, like a distant earthquake under their feet. On Earth, billions watched with wide eyes as the images came through. The Titan looked like it was standing in the middle of a storm, each blast lighting up its shields like fireworks. To many, it felt like watching a giant stand calmly while children threw stones at its feet. When the barrage finally ended, the Titan floated untouched, its shields glowing brighter than before. Gasps filled the council chambers light years away. Entire civilizations whispered the same thought. No ship in known history had ever endured such fire without breaking. Humanity had built something new, something terrifying in its strength. The captain gave the order. This time the Titan would respond. But again, it was not with reckless fury. The ship's weapons rotated slowly, humming with deep power. Energy built inside the massive cannons, vibrations echoing through the ship's walls. The crew held their breath as a beam of white light burst forward, cutting across the stars. The shot did not aim to destroy. Instead, it passed just close enough to the alien formation that their shields flared in panic. Space bent and rippled as the energy screamed past them, forcing their ships to pull back sharply. The message was unmistakable. Humanity had the ability to shatter them, but it chose not to. The galaxy had seen weapons before, but not like this. The Titan's fire was not just powerful, it was precise, controlled, almost surgical. It was a reminder that true strength was not in destroying everything, but in knowing exactly where to stop. On Earth, the reaction was electric. People in cities roared with pride, strangers hugged in the streets, and children shouted that humanity had finally shown the galaxy who they were. In far colonies, where life had always been hard, miners and workers watched the Titan shot replay again and again, their chests swelling with hope. For once, they felt like no enemy could ever come and take their homes away. The alien fleet paused, their ships dimmed, their weapons cooling, their signals softening. It was as if they were finally acknowledging that the test had ended, that humanity had passed. The translator picked up fragments. Restraint, control, not prey. Not reckless. But the challenge wasn't only for the aliens. It was for humanity itself. Inside the Titan, the crew felt the weight of what they had done. They had shown mercy when they could have chosen destruction. That choice would echo louder than any weapon. It would define how the galaxy remembered this first encounter. The Council's networks blazed with debate. Some civilizations demanded that the Titan be disarmed, calling it too dangerous for a young species. Others argued that humanity had earned its seat among the great powers by proving strength without arrogance. For once, Earth was at the center of every conversation, yet not everyone celebrated. In quiet rooms in hidden corners of the galaxy, there were those who watched with cold eyes. To them, the Titan was not a symbol of hope, but a threat to their control. Plans began to form, whispered in shadows, of how this new power might one day be challenged. Humanity's rise was not just admired, it was feared. Back on the Titan, however, none of that mattered in the moment. The crew stood proud at their stations, their voices steady, their eyes fixed on the stars ahead. They had endured the storm, answered the challenge and proven that humanity's power was real. Not just the power of weapons, but the power of choice. The alien fleet finally pulled back, their ships drifting into a new formation that looked less like a threat and more like a salute. The translation came through again, broken but clear enough. You are titans among stars. In that moment, the galaxy was no longer speechless. It was in awe. Humanity had shown what it meant to be strong, and in doing so, they had changed the course of history. As the Titan floated in the dark, its shields glowing faintly like the skin of a giant, the crew knew this was only the beginning. They had been tested, and they had passed. But they also knew that more challenges were waiting beyond the stars, and yet deep inside they carried something stronger than fear. They carried pride. They carried unity. They carried the knowledge that humanity had built something no one else dared to dream of. A ship that stood not as a weapon of conquest, but as a guardian of their place in the galaxy. The Titan remained in the void, silent and immense, watching over Earth and its people. Across the stars, civilizations whispered its name, and for the first time, humanity understood what it truly meant to walk among giants. The galaxy is never truly silent. Even in the deep void, news travels faster than light, carried through transmissions, whispers, and hurried conversations. After the Titan's first encounter with the alien fleet, every world, every outpost, and every listening station buzzed with a single subject. Humanity had revealed its Titan-class battleship, and nothing would ever be the same again. On Earth, celebrations still echoed through the cities. Streets were filled with people waving flags, cheering and singing. Families who once looked up at the night sky with fear now looked up with pride. The Titan had not only survived, but had shown restraint, mercy, and strength. It had become more than just a ship. It was now a symbol of unity. People who had once argued over borders, politics, and old grudges now found themselves standing side by side, their eyes shining with the same pride. For the first time in generations, humanity felt whole. In distant colonies, life was usually quiet and filled with labor. Miners worked long shifts in asteroid belts, farmers toiled on harsh planets with thin atmospheres, and traders risked their lives on lonely trade routes. These were the people who often felt forgotten by Earth's grand speeches. But when the news of the Titan reached them, even their hearts stirred. Miners gathered in their stations, watching the massive ship disarm an alien vessel with a single shot. Farmers stood outside their domes at night, imagining the Titan drifting through the stars above them, a protector they could finally believe in. For once, even the most distant human settlements felt connected to the home they had left behind. But outside of humanity, the reactions were not so simple. In the chambers of the Galactic Council, the debate had reached a fever pitch. Some representatives spoke with trembling voices, warning that the Titan was too powerful for such a young species. They argued that humanity had advanced too quickly, that no civilization should have the right to build such a weapon in secret. Others, however, saw things differently. They reminded the Council that humanity had not attacked, had not tried to conquer, and had not destroyed. The Titan could have wiped out the alien fleet, yet it had chosen not to. Was that not proof of wisdom? Was that not the mark of a civilization ready to stand as equals? Still, jealousy and fear spread quickly. Older empires who had ruled for thousands of years struggled with the thought of newcomers suddenly changing the balance of power. Their fleets, once feared across the stars, now looked fragile compared to the Titan. Their people, once proud, now whispered about Earth with uncertainty. Some admired the humans, but others quietly began to plan. On worlds far from the Council's watchful eyes, secret meetings were held. Leaders of powerful empires sat in dark rooms, speaking in hushed tones about how humanity's rise could threaten their control. If one young world can build this Titan, they asked, what will stop others from following? Plans began forming, plans of alliances, blockades, maybe even war. Humanity had impressed the galaxy, but it had also unsettled it. Meanwhile, the alien fleet that had first encountered the Titan returned to its own people. Their leaders questioned them for hours, demanding every detail of what had happened. The survivors spoke of a ship so large it seemed endless, a ship whose weapons were as precise as they were powerful, a ship that refused to kill even when it easily could have. Some of the aliens viewed this as honor. Others saw it as arrogance. But all of them agreed on one truth: humanity was no longer weak. Back aboard the Titan, the crew had not allowed the pride of victory to overwhelm them. They continued their watch, knowing that what they had done was only the beginning. The captain reminded everyone that restraint had been their greatest weapon, and that the galaxy was not only watching, they were judging. Every move the Titan made now would shape how humanity was remembered for generations. On Earth, scientists and engineers who had built the Titan felt both relief and pressure. They had proven their creation worked, but they knew it was not invincible. Somewhere out there in the galaxy, other civilizations were already studying the Titan's performance, searching for weaknesses, imagining counters. Humanity could not stop now. They would have to keep improving, keep preparing, because the galaxy was vast and not every neighbor would come in peace. Still, hope shone brighter than fear. Children in classrooms spoke proudly of joining the Titan's crew one day. Artists painted great murals of the ship drifting across starlit skies. Songs were written, stories told, and humanity's imagination stretched farther than ever before. For the first time in history, Earth's people felt like the stars truly belonged to them. The Council finally sent an official message to Earth. Their words were carefully chosen, heavy with formality. They welcomed humanity to the galactic stage, offering a seat at their endless debates and decisions. But beneath their polished tone, everyone could feel the unease. The Council had not chosen to welcome Earth out of kindness. They had done it because they had no choice. The Titan had made sure of that. In the quiet of the night, when the celebrations died down and the cheers faded, some humans still felt a weight in their hearts. They wondered if the Titan had made them safe, or if it had painted a target on their backs. They wondered if they had truly entered the galaxy as equals, or if they had just stepped into a new kind of danger. These doubts whispered in the minds of soldiers, leaders, and ordinary citizens alike. But when dawn came, those doubts always faded into the same truth. Humanity had faced its first great test, and it had not broken. For centuries, they had been dismissed, ignored, and underestimated. Now, the galaxy had no choice but to remember them. The Titan had made sure of that too. In distant corners of space, travelers whispered stories of the great human ship. Some described it as a guardian, others as a monster. But whether told with fear or with admiration, the story always ended the same way, with the image of a giant ship drifting through the stars, unshaken, unbroken, and undefeated. And so the legend of the Titan began. It would be remembered as the day humanity stepped out of the shadows and into the light of the galaxy. The day they proved that strength did not have to mean cruelty. The day they showed that even a young species born on a small blue planet could rise high enough to make the oldest empires pause in silence. In the end, the galaxy did not stay speechless. It spoke with awe, with caution, with fear, and with hope. But the moment itself, the moment when the Titan-class battleship faced the stars, remained beyond words. For humanity, it was not the end of the journey. It was only the beginning.